You don't need no water, let that motherfucker burn, baby. Let it burn, baby. Let it burn. You don't need no water, let that motherfucker burn, baby. Let it burn.
The second story I'm going to read is called The Watcher. My cousin and his family, wife and infant son, had lived in their house for about 5 years. His wife left home to drop the baby off at daycare before work, but realized she had left her phone at home. Entering the house, she turned the corner to the hallway and nearly ran into the drop-down attic ladder, which was fully extended. They never used the attic as it was filled with loose insulation, and my cousin had left for work hours earlier. She quietly left the house, drove around the corner, and called the police. When the police investigated, they found a short-range transmitter connected to several cameras hidden throughout their home. The light fixture in the shower, the ceiling fan above their bed, even a pinhole in the nursery were sending videos to a nearby location. Their neighbor, a few houses away, had been given a key by the prior owners and installed surveillance equipment once he knew their schedule. My cousin's wife walked in on him, updating his equipment, but he forgot something at his house and left to get it when she walked in. He had been watching them for years. So the third story is called The Blind Old Woman. Worked at a women's clothing mail-order catalog call center. During training, a veteran worker was talking about getting to know the frequent callers and the story of one of them. So, old lady used to call in often. She was blind, but would have someone help her pick out things. The manager of her apartment complex, I think. She would order often, and they got to know her by name. Well, eventually she stopped calling in, so they contacted the number they had for her, which was the apartment manager's number. The old lady was fine, but had to be moved to a new building because, well, the old blind lady was very meticulous with her cleaning. She cleaned everything often at old lady level. So the manager had come in to do some maintenance for the first time in many months. Every room in her apartment above head level had thick webs and nests of black widow spiders, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Can you imagine an oblivious old lady walking around blind in a house she thinks is spotlessly clean, but there is a soul-freezing nightmare swarming all over the ceiling? Could you imagine that? I wonder how many, spiders fell into her food and she ate, or, how many, she ate in her sleep or just crawled on her in her sleep and this and that. The fourth story is called Noises Behind the Door. This actually happened to a friend of mine. She used to live in an entirely different town when she was younger, and her closet had this strange door in the back of it. Well, whether it was just imagined due to her being a child at the time, or if it really did happen, she started to hear noises coming from behind this door whenever she went to bed. She told me that several times she tried telling her parents that she was hearing these noises, but they never believed her. So some time goes by, and one day her parents get a call from the police because they just arrested a homeless man. This was not just any homeless man, though. This homeless man was living in some sort of tunnel that goes straight to the door in the back of her closet. So every once in a while, for whatever reason, this man would come through that door and watch my friend sleep in her closet. Under the bed. True story about my grandpa that takes place before they had children. My grandpa, Daryl, worked a night shift, so my grandma, Dora, was home alone most nights. Her sister-in-law, Rose, would randomly come over to keep her company. Dora decided to go to bed early one night. Rose came over that night to see how she was doing. She went to Dora's bedroom after calling for her with a reply of, "I'm in bed, just come in." Upon entering the room, Rose starts acting weird and telling her she really wants her to get up and come help her with something in the kitchen. Dora was ready to go to sleep and was already in bed and really didn't want to. Rose was really adamant for her to come help her, telling her it was urgent. After a while, Dora eventually got up and followed Rose to the kitchen. Upon entering, Rose whispers in a panic with tears in her eyes, "There's a man under your bed with a knife." Dora, of course, didn't believe at first, but seeing the panic in Rose's eyes, she couldn't not believe her. They proceeded to call the cops and left to the neighbor's house. The cops came and found a man hiding in the closet with a butcher knife. And that is the story of how my grandmother was almost murdered and why I still to this day, as a 30-year-old man, checks under his bed. The blind date. About 30 years ago, my mom went on a blind date. Her date took her to a restaurant. Although he was nice enough, she just wasn't into him. Not even halfway through the meal, she was already thinking of ways to leave early. Me. The waiter could tell. While my mom's date was in the restroom, the waiter approached her and asking her if she was okay. She explained she was on a blind date and was not having much fun. Turns out the waiter was just about to get off work. He offered to give her a ride home if she waited another 10 minutes. She considered it and was about to say yes when her date came back from the restroom. She gave a subtle headshake no to the waiter and smiled. She and her date finished their meals and he took her home. The next night, my mom was watching the evening news. A story comes on about a woman being raped and murdered behind a restaurant the night before. Oh my God. The restaurant was the one she had just been at. They showed the murderer's picture. It was the waiter.
Oh, shit.
Up on the roof. I used to live next to a senile old woman who would knock on my door late at night crying and saying there was somebody on her roof. I'd always have to reassure her that it was just possums running around and that she was fine. This went on for years until her kids finally sent her to a home and new people moved in. A week or so after this, I woke up to police cars on the street outside of my house. I asked the new neighbor what happened, and he told me he got out of bed and saw legs dangling out of the ceiling in the kitchen and assumed he was being robbed. The guy got away, but when the cops checked inside the roof, they found chairs, cans of beans, water bottles, magazines, and some blankets. Old mate had been set up there for at least 2 years, assuming her complaints coincided with him moving in. She once told me her dementia was so bad she'd sometimes have to go to the grocery store a few times a day because she'd come home and realize she forgot to buy something. I wonder now if it was just because he was taking all of her food. Hidden in the tree. This couple had a huge tree in their backyard, and it started to smell and ooze. They had arborists come in and look at the tree, but no one could figure out what was wrong. The couple decided to have the tree removed. When the branches started coming down, a body fell out. A homeless woman was sleeping in the tree and died. Her body had been in there decomposing for ages.
Gross.
Abduction. I was only 4 when this happened, was playing outside with my siblings and neighbors, and while they were busy playing, a lady approached me and took her to her place, a nearby neighborhood. After a while, everybody was freaking out and they started looking for me. This lady was severely depressed. Her husband left her after their son died. He couldn't handle her depression, apparently. She took me to her place, fed me, and gave me tons of candy. For a couple of days. She also made me wear her deceased son's pajamas. At some point, she took me to buy some new candy from the store. The store owner knew her, so he reported that to the police. She didn't hurt me at all. The doctor even said I was fed well. I always think of her and pray she's in a better place now. Even tried to go visit her when I was a college student. Her house was sold and she moved away, apparently. Close call. My high school teacher attended Central Washington University in the early 1970s. She and her best friend, Susan Rancourt, were leaving the library late at night to go to a movie. Susan was offering to carpool together on the way out when they were approached by a guy with a broken arm trying to carry a diorama of some sort. He asked for some assistance, which they both gladly agreed to, but my teacher had left one of her books in the library. The last she saw of Susan was her smiling face as she graciously helped this guy to his beetle? Oh. Susan was reported missing, and it turned out that she was abducted. Oh my God! Susan was reported missing, and it turned out that she was abducted and murdered by Ted Bundy.
Oh, shit.
Pitter patter. I went to my aunt and uncle's house one family vacation about 10 years ago. We drove from South Texas to some small town in Missouri. Can't remember the name. We arrived there about 1 a.m. Family consisted of myself, 2 younger sisters, mother, father. Most of the family was hungry from the long drive and wanted to see if a McDonald's was open. I was tired from the long car ride and wanted to just stay at the house. Mom said one of my sisters would be staying as well. I settled down into the living room watching TV, slightly dozing off. I can remember hearing pitter-patter down the hallway and assumed my sister was just running around. She'd been eating sugary snacks the whole way up. I get a call from my mom asking what I wanted to eat, and in the background can hear both of my sisters arguing. I hear a giggle somewhat behind me, stand straight up, and look around. Nothing. I ask my mom if my sister ended up going with them, which she confirmed. I stood in the corner of the room till my entire family got back.
Okay.
Oh, me and Dylan always talk about these things. Skinwalker. This happened to a friend of mine and was verified by her sister and girlfriend. The three of them were camping in an area in southern Utah. Sorry, I don't remember the exact location. And it was during the fall, early winter, so it got dark very early, around 5 o'clock. When it started getting dark, the three of them built a fire and sat around it, just talking and eating, normal stuff. Everything was fine for a while, but they started to hear this weird chirping noise. She described it to me as a kookaburra call, slowed down. They got kind of freaked out at this point because it didn't sound like any regular animal. They also kept noticing rustling/movement out of the corners of their eyes, but could never see what was making it. After a while, they went to bed, and everything was fine until my friend was woken up in the middle of the night to see what looked like hands pressed up against the outside of their tent. And she heard a weird, wet breathing sound, like when someone has a stuffy throat and kind of wheezes while breathing. She said she was so scared she couldn't talk, but was able to wake up her sister. They stayed quiet, and eventually the handprints kind of just faded away. In the morning, they wanted to get the hell out of there, so they started packing up their stuff at sunrise. My friend looked around where the handprints had been, and saw a trail of long, skinny footprints leading up to their campsite, but not away from it. Her and her sister aren't the kind to BS around, so I believe that this actually happened. To this day, she's convinced that it was a skinwalker. Stay tuned for the next video. Love you!
Away. Still going bad on them anyway. Saw you last night, but did it right day. Yeah, a lot of murk caught me in a hallway, but got a sticky and I keep it at my door.